Severely meaning by making the person pay for the harm that the subject of defamation has suffered. And we've learned in the last lecture that there are concerns about criminal punishment for defamation, right? Whether that is a proportionate remedy. Because what you lose by being defamed is your fame, meaning your likability by third parties, but nobody is guaranteed to be liked by others. It is subject to whimsical thoughts and tendencies and prejudices of other people. So many people are asking whether it is ethical to take away someone's physical liberty for interfering with interfering with how well someone is liked by other people, which is no guarantee, which is not guaranteed by anything, right? And also, there were concerns about whether truth should be a basis for holding someone responsible for defamation, because truth has a lot of value. Truth has a lot of positive value for human civilization. Good for economy, good for democracy. But if you try to punish truthful information about others just because the subjects of that information feel uncomfortable about it, or the subjects of the information are not presented in a way they like to, then we lose a lot in terms of justice, in terms of social justice, democracy, and well-being of the society. There are some arguments that truth need be restricted if it concerns someone's privacy, and that is topic for Thursday's class. Okay, so we're going to talk about privacy. But the question we should ask is whether you should restrict information. You should restrict truthful information just for making a person not as likable as before by third parties. Or we should let true information freely flow so that people's likability truly reflect who they are. If the true information is restricted, the flow of true information is restricted, then people will not have sufficient information to evaluate other people. And we will be tricked into thinking better of other people than who they are. The total reputation or total likability of us will be the sum total of what we don't know about one another and what we know about one another. Right? So how much information, whatever the reputation, whatever likability that we have, will not truly reflect our true value, but the value modified, the value manipulated by keeping down uncomfortable truth about ourselves. Is that true faith that we want to protect through defamation? So those were big topics from last class. So the question is, when there is illegal information, like defamatory information, or copyright infringement, or copyright infringing information, who should be responsible, and what should the companies do? The companies that mediate the circulation of defamatory information or copyright infringing information. So let's first look at how the internet works. Okay, so this is the first article I asked you to read. Alright, so this is something that this person wrote for a 5-year-old niece. So this should not have been too difficult for you, because it's something written for a 5-year-old. Okay. So the internet works by using a protocol called TCP/IP. TCP means Transmission Control Protocol, and IP means Internet Protocol. And so TCP packs the data in the data packet, and IP is where the data packet is delivered to a certain address. Okay. And at each address there is a computer. So all the computers around the world have an IP address. So if even your mobile phones, your IP address is changed, but your mobile phone also has an IP address. So if I want to send a message through KakaoTalk, this computer also has IP address, and the server of KakaoTalk also have IP address, and this chatting room, right? The chatting room has a certain URL which all of you use to log in. Okay? So if I want to write something here right now, there, TCP packed the data into data packet and sent from this computer that you see right in front of me, and was sent to the KakaoTalk server hosting this chatting room. Okay. And after it was sent, the server sends that message, Canada, or you know this Korean phrase by now, back to all your mobile phones or your PC Kakao software when you open the program. So information. So that's how it works generally. And then it's not just internet layer and transport layer. So TCP is transport layer and internet layer is IP layer. But on the top, there is an application layer and there is a network access layer. Okay, network access layer is physical connection. So for the information from this computer to arrive at the KakaoTalk server hosted in this chatting room, there has to be physical line through which data travels, right? So somebody must connect the optical fiber or a simple copper line, right? So that's the network access layer. And application layer is when the data packet arrives at the computer, there has to be some software that unpackages the data, right, and presents to the user in a readable format. That's the application layer. So this web browser is on the application layer. It's not at the transport layer, it's not at the internet layer, it is this Google Chrome, that's application layer. Whatever you see on the computer that you see yourself is all on the application layer. Okay? Alright. Now, when you think about these layers, it's not a very complicated idea, and it's not unique to computer science. It's not unique to the internet. Even in your ordinary lives, there are layers of transactions. There are layers of doing things. For instance, when you want to take this class, right? When you enroll into this class, there has to be some people who are responsible for finding lecture rooms for this class, right? So you can call that physical layer. Now, do they worry about what we teach? Do they worry about, like how many times, well, they should worry about how many times. But do they worry about the subject matter? Do they worry about whether we give finals or, midterms, right? So they don't care about that. They only care about whether we will have this space for us to meet, right? So you can call that like physical layer. Now, who worries about what is being taught inside the classroom? There is general education department that has evaluated my class proposal and approved it, right? Now, that academic department, that general education department, they don't care about where we meet, right? They only care about what is being taught. So you can call, so they play at the top level, right? So they talk about, what is appropriate to be taught for the freshman, sophomore, or general education for even juniors and seniors at Korea University. Okay, so you can equate those academic decisions being made by the general education department to the application layer. because they are concerned with the content of what you receive, right? And in the middle, there is a layer where the school decides who will deliver the lecture, right? So there is a personal department that reviews my past lecture records, my academic performance in the past, and looks at what I've written on the appropriate subject. And that level, that personal layer, will not also, will not be concerned with the physical layer, where people worry about whether we have space to meet, right? So this type of layered thinking is always, around us in our ordinary lives, and internet also, has that layered structure, so that people focusing on one thing don't have to worry about other things. People worried about providing space can just specialize in providing good space for us to, have efficient lectures in a comfortable setting. While academic department can just focus on whether the student body has, diverse set of classes to choose from at a level appropriate for them in subjects important enough for college education, for higher education. And the personnel department also can just focus on whether the lecturer selected, the lecturer proposed to teach that class has enough competence, so that each layer can do. If each layer does its best job, then the whole thing. So the whole this class called Information Society and Ethics can function properly, and you are properly. Okay. So that's what's meant by this layer. So this layer, don't try to open up your computer and try to find 4 layers, right? I mean, don't open up your iPhone and expect to find 4 levels of something, right? You're not going to find it. This is not something that exists physically. It is just a way of thinking, and it is just a way of interacting with one another. So, this way, if I want to, for instance, move my class, I'll not go to the personnel department, I'll not go to the academic department. I'll only go to the physical layer. I'll only go to the layer that's responsible for distributing lecturers or assigning lecturers for each class. Okay. Or if I want to let another person teach the class, then I'm not going to go to the academic department, I'm not going to go to the physical department, I'm going to the personnel department, right? And have the personnel department evaluate this other person that I want to replace. Well, this other person that I want to have replace me, right? So these are the 4 layers. And the next thing that you have to understand about the internet is that internet is a network of networks. Okay? The internet is more like a series of tubes with various connection points, various transmission points, various send receive points, and various working speeds and government body watching over the entire process. So what's meant by this is that internet is spelled always with I, because the way all these computers are connected, okay, that in itself is called the internet, right? And if a computer is offline, then it is off the internet, right? Now, having said that, can there be two internets? Is it theoretically possible that there are two internets? Two internets. What do you think? I just said that the internet is a network of networks of computers. For instance, the Korea University has a network of computers, right? And it is connected to Yonsei University network. And it's also connected to Seoul National University network. That way, when I send the mail to Yonsei University, my colleague at Yonsei University, it properly arrives at his computer. Same thing with a professor at Seoul National. And if you add other local networks, then you get the internet. So, can there be two internets? Well, theoretically, it is possible. If there is someone with a big laser gun and cuts off the connections, like right down the middle, okay? So if this is the globe, okay? If somebody cuts down all the connection points, say along a line, along a north-south line, along the Pacific, right? Then will we have two different internets? No, because the Earth is round, so if the data doesn't travel across the Pacific, it can go backward, right? Through the Indian Ocean and Atlantic Ocean and travel at the and make successful trip to the destination. Okay, well then how about if we cut off all the lines across the Atlantic as well? Right? And let's assume that there are no connections across the polar regions. And let's say there are no internet connections through satellite. Then, yes, there will be two internets. And people may call one internet, Internet A, the other internet, Internet B. Or, Elon Musk is planning to build a colony on the moon, or it's the Mars, by 2080 or something, right? So if you have a colony there, and a lot of people live there with their own networks, then that will also be another internet. And if you think about China, China has a lot of computers networked within themselves, and people in China cannot use Facebook, cannot use Twitter, probably cannot do Google search. Correct me if I'm wrong. They cannot. They can do Google search. Okay, well, but what if they cannot what if Chinese government decides to ban Google as well? Okay. People in China cannot do YouTube. That I know. Okay. So let's say the Chinese government increased the list of services that are not available within China. Okay. Then there will be internet for China, and then the internet for the rest of the world. Now, it's only a theoretical possibility, but that has not happened. Okay? The governments have found the government has found so much value in keeping the network on, or keeping their people connected to the network, that it is very rare that all internet connections are severed in one region. It has happened. It has happened. In Egypt, back in 2010 or 2011, when there is a democratic revolution, Egyptian government actually cut the entire Egyptian people off the internet. How would the Egyptian government do that? Would the Egyptian government go to the application layer, or transport layer, or internet layer, or network access layer to achieve that? They go to the network access layer, which means the Egyptian government goes to the telecoms or cable TV operators or broadband operators who provide the physical conduits through which data travels, and ask the network operators to block all traffic from overseas. Okay. So anyway, just wanted to think about how the internet works, and I mean, the reason I'm reminding you that there can be two internets is because I want you to remember that there is no center in the internet. The way these computers are just connected to one another, that's called the internet. Okay. So if you cut off a sizable network from the internet, yes, I mean temporarily, I mean it'll be hard to call that cut off portion the internet, since we use the term internet only for the global network. But physically, right, other than the size, that cut off portion and the remainder, the big remainder, theoretically and technically, there is really no difference between the two parts, because one is bigger than the other. Okay. And if the bigger part, if both the bigger part and small part choose, they can continue to operate in the same protocol, same 4-layered structure. Okay. Now, what's meant by the internet not having the center is that when data packet travels from one point to another, there is no center that the data goes through. Okay? There is no center. It has to make hops from one computer network to another, and next, and so on. Right? So for instance, as he has experimented here, when he wants to read a local newspaper online, he is so he wants to read New Zealand Herald, right? And he is in Gaines, Florida, right? So from from Gainesville, Florida, USA, from data to travel from Gainesville, Florida, USA to the computer hosting the contents of this New Zealand Herald, local newspaper in New Zealand. It has to travel through multiple networks. And he has counted 17. Now, it will not be 17 all the time. On next day, it may be 15 or 18. Depending on how well each network is functioning, each network has a promise, okay, on this transport layer, on this transport layer, not transport layer, on this internet layer, all the networks have to keep a promise, which is that when they receive data from their neighborhood, okay, from neighboring network, they have to deliver to their next network as soon as possible and to the most willing neighboring network, willing to deliver to their neighbors. Okay. So if I'm a local network, if I receive data from my neighbor, then I look at my neighbors, I look at my other neighbors, and then find the one that's most efficient, okay, that will be fastest in delivering it to their next neighbors, and I give the data to that one neighbor. Okay, that promise delivered most efficiently to its or one of its neighbors, right? And depending on the network conditions, we don't know. Things change. We don't know which pathway the data, through which pathway the data will travel. Okay. So that's why this internet poses a challenge from the regulator's point of view. Okay. Let's say the government wants to regulate information society, and the government wants to make sure that all the illegal information are cleansed off the internet, and you look at only lawful information. Now, if there's a one central place where the information goes through, all the government needs to do is just review, just watch on that bottleneck, right? Just look at all the data coming through that gateway, and then just call out the bad apples. And there is no such central place in internet, because the packets, nobody knows through which route it will travel. If I send an email to your account, there can be 100,000 different ways in which the email can arrive in your account. So if the government wants to block that email, email's path, the government will not know where to look. Okay? All right. Having said that, how does this? Is there any computer science major here? No. Okay. Well, having understood the science behind the internet, what does this mean for ethics? Okay. What does this mean for ethics? Now, these are other supplementary readings for how the internet works. I asked you to read chapter 3a of this manuscript. So, what defines the internet? The defining feature of the internet is its nature as an extremely distributed communication network. So distributed, it allows almost all individuals to participate in mass-scale communications. Extremely distributed. What I mean by that is that in the internet there is no center. There is no predictable central pathway through which people can communicate with one another. Right? That means there is no way for any one person, any powerful person, to control what goes through the internet. All individuals are allowed to post their individual views and opinions without anyone's approval. And it doesn't work not just, that freedom is not just for the senders, it's also for the receivers or retrievers of the information. Right? So all individuals are allowed to view and download all other individuals' postings, again without any one person's approval. So, given that freedom, so many people can show themselves to the whole world, present their products, present their speeches, present their videos to the whole world without any approval. And anybody can also look at all the videos and text and material that other people have made available. Now the question is whether the companies that are providing the internet connection and also allowing you to look at all those contents, right, should be responsible for what goes on their services. If there is a video that is bad mouthing you, right? Or let's just say text. Let's say there is a text on social media that spreads false information about you that is very fatal to your likability, to your reputation. Okay. Let's say someone has false information that false information. Again, not truth. So we are not talking about truth defamation. So false information that you have cheated on your last final exam. Okay? And that's false information. And it's on Facebook. What should be Facebook's responsibility? That's the question that we call intermediary liability. Right? It's not whether the person who posted the information will be liable. They will be liable if they commit defamation. If they commit copyright infringement, of course they should be liable. The question is, how about these companies that are forming the 4 stacks of the internet? How about the network operators? How about the telcos through which other people can access the defamatory material on you? Right? I mean, it's because the network operators allow the data pass through. Okay, allow the data to pass through so that other people will access this false information about you. Right? And it's because network operators allow this bad person to access Facebook server, he or she is destroying your reputation. Right? What is the responsibility of the network operator? And how about Facebook itself? Right? Facebook also, by making this software where people can freely update one another with what they are doing, it is through Facebook that people can defame one another. And it's through Facebook that people can violate other people's copyrights as well. What is their responsibility? Now, some people argue that internet companies should be responsible for contents on their services. Now, the problem of holding the companies responsible is that if we do that, we will lose the freedom. We will lose the freedom of unapproved posting or unapproved viewing of the material, which is a gift to the humanity. It is through freedom that powerless individuals can have the power of information that the companies and governments used to have. It is through that freedom that the powerless individuals have the power of publicity that the companies and government have. Now, what I'm trying to argue is that if you try to hold these companies, the network operators, or Facebook, Twitter, these intermediaries responsible for the illegal information that's taking place, that's being transmitted through their services, we will lose both freedom and we lose the value of the internet. So, because the way the internet is structured and because most services work, intermediary cannot possibly know who posts what contents, right? Now, if intermediaries are held liable for unknown contents, intermediaries will have to protect themselves by constantly monitoring what gets posted on their services. And some intermediaries will want to review what is put on their services before it goes online. Okay? And there is such a service. There is such a service, right? And there are services where you have to get a pre-approval to put something online. Can you imagine what service that is? Now, when you put something on YouTube, you don't need any approval. When you put something on Facebook, you don't need any pre-approval. But there are services that you need pre-approval. Can you think of any service like that? I mean, most people have not used that service. Okay. It's okay, this is good. App Store. Okay. Let's say you want to sell something, sell some apps on App Store. Whether you do it through Apple or do it through Google Play Store, they will vet your apps. They look at the apps, and they check whether there's any illegal information, and if it has like obscene material, they will not accept it. Now, imagine that Facebook or Twitter start doing the same thing to your postings. Will you continue using Facebook or Twitter? I mean, just imagine that every posting you are making, somebody behind the counter is looking at it and see if it's appropriate. Right? So that's the freedom that you are losing. And you lose that freedom because intermediaries, if we hold intermediaries liable, right, for the contents that they don't know about, then they have to know every content that goes on their service, and they have to approve each one of it, which means the death of freedom for the users, right? I mean, you think that this is some special rule for internet companies? No. Even before the time of the internet, there were communication services that the criminals used to plan their crimes or execute their crimes. What were those communication services that criminals used? Let's say there's a conspiracy to rob a bank. And let's say there are two people living in different cities and they want to plan bank robbery. Before the age of the internet, what would they do? Telephone. Or if they are brave, they may use this, postal mail, right? Yeah, I mean, that would be a very stupid way to plan robbery, but if they don't have a telephone, they may do it, right? Now, do we hold the telephone company or the mail service company responsible for the bank robbery because the criminals use their services? No, right? I mean, if we held if we held them liable, the telephone company will want to do what? Will want to listen in on all our conversations, make sure that they are not held liable for whatever crimes that the telephone users may be conspiring to commit, right? Huh? Telephone companies usually don't have incentive to listen, but our governments, to protect us from us, they have incentives to listen, right? To find terrorists and blah, blah, blah. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that listening in part on Thursday. Anyway, okay, there was one question in. What are some reasons why intermediaries' liability on increasing global trend? Hannah? Hannah here? Yes? So you are asking why intermediary liability is becoming a global trend? What do you mean by global trend? You mean more people are talking about it, or why people are using it?
That's what I read.
Okay, can you speak up and ask your question again?
I was just wondering why they become a global trend, because that's what I read in the article.
Okay. Intermediary liability is a global trend in this way. Okay. So for the reason that I just stated, that for the reason that I just stated, more and more countries are making laws so that intermediaries are not held liable for the contents posted on their services. In that sense, it is a global trend. I don't know whether that's what you meant. But it is also a global trend to challenge those rules and laws. Some people, like the Korean government, believes that the intermediaries should be responsible more, should be liable more on the contents of their services than how it is, how they are in other countries. Okay? Look at the table here. Europe. Obtaining, Europe e-commerce directive. Now, directive is like, it's a really novel thing. It happens only in Europe. You know that Europe is a union of many countries. To unify the laws between the member countries, they make what's called a directive. And it directs member countries to pass laws according to the contents of the directive. So e-commerce directive was passed by the European Union. And that puts obligations on the member countries to pass similar laws or laws that enforce the directive. So this is like a blueprint for what all EU member countries should subscribe to in passing laws in this area or on this topic. It says, there is no liability. Okay. There is a liability. Let me read that again. Upon obtaining knowledge or awareness of the infringing information, so copyright infringing information, the provider acts expeditiously to take down the information. The service provider is not liable for the information stored. Okay, so only when the service provider has knowledge of the copyright infringing material and fails to take it down, only then the service provider will be responsible for copyright infringement. Okay, what's meant by that is that if there were some infringing material, let's say I'm Facebook, and on my service, some users put on a lot of copyright infringing material. And if I didn't know about it, then I'm not responsible at all. Okay? Even if I could have found out, okay? I mean, if I'm Facebook, I have access to look at everybody's account, right? just as anybody else is. I mean, all the contents that are posted on the public setting, everyone around the world has access, and Facebook has more access, right? So Facebook could have discovered the copyright infringing activity going on there, but even if they don't do it, if they don't try to find out whether there is, even if they don't try to monitor these copyright infringing activities, they will not be responsible for whatever goes on in their services. Okay? That's the mandate of e-commerce directive. The United States, upon obtaining knowledge or awareness of facts or circumstances of an infringing material or activity, or upon notification of claimed infringement, if the service provider responds expeditiously to take down the material claimed to be infringing, the service provider shall not be liable for infringing copyright. Same thing, right? As long as there is a knowledge, as long as the company reacts expeditiously to a notice of infringement, it will not be responsible or liable for whatever has gone on in the past. Okay. Japan, same thing. When the relevant service provider knew or there is a reasonable ground for the provider to know the infringement, the service provider shall not be liable for any loss incurred from such infringement unless it is technically possible to take down the infringing information. Which means that if it is technically possible and didn't do it, then the provider will be held responsible. Okay. Now, if you read this article, you know that Korean law is a little bit different. Korean law departs from the international trend, the global trend. There is Korean law has similar provisions up to this part, but there is another provision that says in the event of a takedown request, OSP. OSP means just another another content provider for another company like Facebook or Twitter, and the company must immediately take down. And this is a different system from other countries, because in Europe, US, Japan, the global trend is that if the companies react fast to known or notice of illegal information, then the companies are given what's called safe harbors. Okay? What's a safe harbor? Well, the fact that they are not held liable for the infringing activity that has gone on before. That's the safe harbor. Right? So that way, it provides incentives. It provides incentives to the companies to act fast whenever there is a notice of illegal activity online. Right? So the law is supposed to incentivize, to give incentive to the companies to act fast, not to monitor, all the innocent material, but react to notice of unlawful information. Right? But Korean law does something else. Korean law requires the companies to take down all material, whether it is lawful or unlawful, which makes it very risky for lawful but controversial material. Lawful material that some people don't like. Okay? If there's a lawful material and if there's a third party who doesn't like it, and sends a notice to the company is obligated to take it down, even if it is lawful. That's why in Korea there is a lot of controversy about lawful contents being taken down. And that's why there is a lot of controversy about lawful contents being taken down and not being restored, even if there is a proof that those contents were lawful. Okay, we are out of time, so let me just take this question. And I'll end the class. It applies to all, it applies to, well, if you're asking about Korean law, doesn't matter whether it's for defamation or for any other purpose. If anybody claims to be defamed by certain material, the company has to take down, even if it is objectively lawful. So it has nothing to do with whether illegal material is lawful or unlawful. If there's somebody who thinks it is lawful, it is unlawful, it is defamatory against themselves, then the content has to come down. Okay, or we are out of time, so we'll end here, and I have put on more material about privacy. Please read them for Thursday class. And if you have not done the reading for this class, intermediate liability, please do read the 3 articles that I just showed you in today's class.